Davis Bradley, welcome to the show. Welcome to Cook's Table. I don't think I've actually said welcome to Cook's Table on any one of my episodes yet because it hasn't really sunk in that this actually has a name and is official. But you're going to be close to number 20, somewhere in that range of guests. It's been a joy so far, and it's an honor to have you representing the financial advising community toward entrepreneurs come and be a part of this. And really, it's just the heart of it is really just, as you know, to have a space to engage in authentic conversations about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, people's stories. And it goes back to my journey, as a kid and my first entrepreneurial venture, which was birthed at our kitchen table, and so we don't have a table in between us. Someday you'll be in my studio and we'll be doing this big time, hopefully. But
Oh yeah.
um, for now, here we are, remote. And I would love to, just hear you kind of introduce yourself to get started and give the audience an idea of who you are, where you're at, and maybe just like a high flyby, like where you went to school, what your career journey has been so far, and then we'll jump into some of the details. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking me on. I didn't know you had 20 episodes already. That's you're pumping them out, man. Um,
sir.
yeah, my name's Davis Bradley. We met originally from working together in the past, which I'm glad we did. And I'm originally from, in short, I say around Jacksonville, Florida, but very, very south Georgia, in a small town called Folkestone, Georgia. I grew up doing music was my big thing, and obviously math resonated more than like reading and writing. But yeah, I went to University of Georgia, studied finance there, and was in the marching band there in college. That's where I met my wife, Reagan, and um, yeah, like I said, I studied finance, and I kind of took a took a hard path to get there. I don't know why, but I started in computer systems engineering,
Oh my gosh.
which everybody just told me I was good at math to do engineering, and that didn't really turn out to be the right kind of math, if you know what I mean.
Mm,
The finance and the engineering side are like two completely different forms of math. So after my freshman year, I'm glad I figured it out. Didn't want to do music professionally, which was good to figure out early on, and then didn't want to do engineering. So my brother was a business major at Georgia and kind of tilted me to start that kind of path, and then that worked out for me. And um, yeah, out of college. I kind of got into the financial advising space, who with a guy who I was kind of a mentor, a kind of a family friend, and I'm sure as we'll get into this, it was kind of on the sales side,
right.
the broker dealer side, and insurance side of the industry, which again marked off something else I didn't want to do. In that time, I was living in Jacksonville, Florida, kind of back at home, and then my wife was in Atlanta, here where I am now. Uh, and then we got engaged at the time, and me knowing that my career there was not kind of what I thought it was going to be, it was an easy move for me to make back to Atlanta, which I started back in corporate finance, working at a utility company.
Mm,
And that was just kind of to get me through the wedding stage planning process. And it did its job there. But I always kind of knew my passion was around helping others, friends, family with their personal finance, investing, and things like that. That led me to a mutual friend of ours referred me to working at the firm you and I worked at, which was a great experience, great learning experience in terms of uh, just investment operations and learning how an RIA firm works. And I couldn't do what I did today without all those steps
mhm.
from my experience. So from there, I'm sure we'll kind of get into some more questions, but I kind of felt that I had an opportunity through my network, uh, different people I've helped in the past, without ever thinking I was going to do this, kind of support me to start my own venture, um, and that kind of maybe take the leap last year, and here we are now. So I'm excited to get into it with the questions you got.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're now the chairman and CEO of Bradley Wealth Group, right?
Yeah, chairman's a new one, but whatever you want to call me. Um,
Let's keep it. Let's keep it. I like it. No, that's great. Cool. Well, I always love asking people about their entrepreneurial journey because it's just such a passion of mine and such a journey for me as well through the years. And it really for me it started back in childhood. So I wonder if you could put a finger on when at what point was it early on in life as was it later on in life that you knew that you were going to be an entrepreneur or you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
yeah, so this is a great question. As I reflect on the past, I think I can see where I grew up. Technically my first job was entrepreneurial. So I started music lessons, taking them myself when I was 5 years old. I started taking piano lessons and then started with band, playing trumpet in fifth grade, and then picked up the guitar in middle school. So music was my life, passion,
Hmm.
everything that I was doing throughout school. And um, I think I could thank my parents for nudging me to keep going and not quitting when it was hard and I was terrible. And um, yeah, so I had some success with that throughout high school and was able to think that I could teach some of the lower level kids music lessons myself.
Hmm.
So that was my little business that I had middle school, high school, had multiple students after school teaching them trumpet lessons. I did some guitar, and then I only think I did one piano student ever, and that was kind of short lived. So yeah, that's kind of where that started for some money in high school to learn what to do with, and probably taught me some responsibilities as well.
Okay.
Um, so when I think about that I kind of did that,
Sure.
but going through college, it was just kind of everybody's main goal. What are you going to do after college, right? Where do you get? Everybody just kind of wants to land a job to have something lined up to not, just be doing nothing after
Mhm.
college. So I was just focused on getting some job with some salary, and I didn't really ever think, oh, I could go do something myself. That was never in my mind. So as an adult, I don't think that I was like pre-wired to think that I was going to be some entrepreneur one day, right? My parents both worked the same jobs for my entire life, and um, which is kind of rare these days to see people
Yeah.
at the same company doing the same thing for their whole careers. But that was the case for me. So I didn't really have a lot of people close to me. Besides one of my family members has a business, but um, in my immediate circle, I never really had that
Uh-huh.
idea. Um, so I think I was circling around the answer of no. I didn't have that pre-wired in me, and even about a year ago today is when last Easter I kind of got the aha moment that I could do this,
Mm.
and it was push from other people more so than this drive that I had myself. So I think I couldn't do what I'm doing without others
Mm.
straight up. So it's not me. It was really just the situation God put me in, and I'm very very grateful to that it's worked how it's worked so far, and I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah. Wow. I think another way to ask that question too, and one thing I'm curious about your own journey with you having so much of what seems to be a natural impulse toward like managing money and the power of investing in the market. And even that in and of itself is strongly, like a business mind, strongly understanding the principles of, compounding and like investment for a better return in the future kind of thing. And every entrepreneur on some level has to understand that, they're putting in time and effort and hopefully there's going to be a payout in the end. Like that's what they're going for. So maybe speak to that specific part of your journey too. I'd be curious to know when did those wheels start to turn in your head about the power of compound interest, the power of investment, the power of the market. When did that become a thing? Because I'll tell you this, and I'll say this too, just for the sake of the audience. Like, you are somebody who almost does this as a hobby, from my view. Like, you've done this personally with your own stuff, and I've heard you nerd out on it before, and it's like this is something that truly is an interest to you. So where'd that come from?
Yes, this is really my reasoning why, and my passion, and why it was kind of undeniable for me to do this. So,
Hmm.
like I said, how others affected me. My dad, my uncle, and my brother are kind of the three close men mentors around me, and have been my whole life. And my brother's 10 years older than I am, so he kind of kickstarted his career a bit before me, so I could see where he was going. And he jokes about being the older brother and going through life for me a little bit ahead, which is great. But that said, I think around the card table, the family table, around holidays and everything, when we were together, I always heard about the stock market. Um, the companies that my family worked for, and things like that. I always heard about it, and I didn't really care, as a 10-year-old, but it just kind of kept getting bashed into my ears without me trying to do it. And I think my dad really did a good job early on, saying, like, if you got $20 for Christmas money, or some birthday money, he would say, you can go spend that now, or you could take it and it'll become $100 later when you want to buy a house. Like, he put some ambitious returns on it. But the concept was kind of driven in my head, and I kind of had the aha moment, I guess you could say, really early.
Hmm.
So, like I said, when I started those music lessons and I was generating some money that I could have a choice of what to do with, I would say, "Hey, Dad, like, here's $100. Can you go buy me a stock in my account?" And I remember, not that I'm that old, but even about 10, 15 years ago, you still had to send in a check sometimes to your broker, and then there would be some transaction fees. And the world of finance has really evolved to a lot lower costs of trading these days, which is really good
Hmm.
for the client. But that's just kind of what I remember my initial days as a, I guess you could say, investor being, and learning how to buy a stock. And um, which most people when they're 14 years old, much less 24 years old, don't really care about those things. So
Right.
um, that led me to having some experience of years at the time already when I was in college. So my friends that were my roommates in college, especially like during COVID, when we were just sitting around, I love setting up my friends a Roth IRA in college, and just telling them to start now. And no, but none of them really cared about it. Some of them did, but I think now that we're out and past those times, I had a few of those friends to go call on and say, "Hey, I'm doing this professionally now. I said this was important a long time ago, and I've kind of been the nerd that's always been yelling at them for a few years, and now I'm able to work with them."
Hmm.
Which has been a helpful start for me, being kind of the finance guy of the group. So that's really the origins of it. And it's always just kind of been a big game of life to me. And how can you possibly get ahead by doing just working a little bit smarter than harder at an
Mm,
early age?
yeah, that makes sense. That's insightful. What I'm hearing too is like it may not be the typical like driven ascendant, always dreamed of owning the world kind of mentality. But what I hear clearly from a young Davis perspective, and from your parents who gave this to you, was like just a value for ownership. And correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong. Correct me if that's not quite on base. But I mean, I think anybody who's highly invested in the stock market just understands on some level how important it is to not just work for a paycheck, but ultimately be building toward ownership in something. Have something that will increase in value. That be another fair way of saying some of
Mhm.
your genesis here?
Absolutely. And I think two main subjects were kind of hammered into me
Hmm.
from those mentors, my dad and my uncle had the working career experience at the time. Um, this number one, yeah, like you said, if you go to work every day and you don't put some of the extra funds that you have in your life to work to then be able to retire one day, you're going to be you're going to be working forever,
Mhm.
and that's might be okay if you love what you do forever, which is great. But that also leads into number two. I think my uncle and my dad had maybe some jobs throughout their career that they didn't love to go to every day, and the number one thing that was told to me in college, it's not really just about, the money you make, but you have to get up every single day and do your job, whatever job that you want. So uh, I think I've gotten here now, but and I've enjoyed things, and there's some other cons about some things in the past, but I think my focus has been more so on loving what I do every day and having a passion behind it, and then that will drive. I think the money will come later, if you have that kind of first going in.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's good. What for you personally? Um, I think you've spoken to some of these things, even just in passing in some of these answers so far. But how would you sum up like now on the flip side of taking the leap? Like, what is it about your day job, your entrepreneurial venture at this point? You know, you being able to do it yourself. What is it that appeals to you now? Like, why is it? I mean, you can get as
Yeah.
basic as like, hey, I make more money or whatever, you know. But like, what is it that really makes entrepreneurship a win for you?
Yeah, I don't really think I had this in mind going in. I think everybody that you hear maybe on social media about being your own boss, that sounds great, and that is now the answer. It's great. But I think doing something because you just want to be your own boss isn't really going to get you to the end result that you may be seeking. I think I know a lot of people that have a boss and they love what they do. So I don't think that cliche thing is really the ultimate driver, but being able to, and there's a lot of weeds you can get into with this. Obviously, in the personal finance world, there's a lot of opinions and subjective things, right? A bunch of topics, but being able to design my firm and my investment strategy and operations how I want to has been very good, and that's kind of something that I was seeking,
Mhm.
um, to be the decision maker on those things. But how I spend my time, who I work with, and um, yeah, just the freedom obviously is very worth it and something that's great. Um, so those are the main things, and
Yep.
there's also cons too. You may have at a job that you have a boss or you have a team. You may have tasks, but they may have some deadlines like, hey, make sure you do this in 2 weeks or something like that. But when something comes up now, it's you have to do this. I don't have somebody to kick this to or
Right.
somebody to call to help me. There's no help here. So I love that. I do love getting things done and being as good of a in customer service as I can. But what if I'm have the flu and a client calls about their money? I got to pull out my computer and make the trade,
Yep.
which can be a con to some people, but I wouldn't have it any other way at this point. So it's
Mhm.
been really good
Mhm.
so far.
I want to ask you about something that's near and dear to my heart, as you know, because we would talk about it often at the company that we came from, which was kind of our internal wiring and what how we've been built or created individually, and how that affects like where we end up in the work world and in other areas of our life too. And it happens to be kind of a question that's always on top of my mind. I don't know how much, I think other people probably don't think about it as much as I do, but I would be curious if you do have thoughts on this, what you would share about what you have learned about yourself along the way, from maybe pre-college Davis to where you are now. What do you know about how you're wired and how you are uniquely able to be effective now at what you do in your entrepreneurial role?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a deep one. I'm
Mhm.
trying to cook up some good stuff here, but I think that I I've learned that I enjoy being a servant of people and not really caring about in my personal opinion in my industry, if you care about just how much money you make or how many clients you got or numbers, you're not going to get far.
Mhm.
When there's so many situations where as a fiduciary, the definition of that's doing what's best for the client, right? And if you don't have that mindset, um, I don't think you're going to get far. You're going to be focused on, oh, that's not going to help my revenue. That's not going to help this month's metrics or whatever. So, I think I'm proud of my where my heart is for my clients, and I want to do this for a very very long time. I don't want to retire. Or I don't have an end goal. Um, so I think that has been nailed down as something that's important to me and firm to me, and um, I think that that's always been the case. But having the lane and the avenue, like I told you when I got out of college, I was not in the right space for the sales type of financial advising, right? So I knew that I was going to be a failure at that side of the industry, right? If it's transactional and this you're on a quota to sell some
Mhm.
insurance or something like that. Yeah, I think that kind of built my wiring and knew led me to know that that was not for me and kind of affirm that um, just what I said is true. So
Mhm.
um, I worked in part of my story was the corporate finance job. I think that that showed me that that wiring is not for me. Just the repetitive days in a corporate office for something that I'm not really passionate about. Not that there's anything wrong with you know companies and those types of jobs. There's many pros to those as well. I met some of the best friends that I'll have forever working there. But yeah, I think wiring, kind of back to one of your original questions as well. I didn't know that I had this entrepreneur wiring, but I think the entrepreneur development that I'm going to have is going to come from, the ultimate core of me just wanting the best for others. And I think that the best entrepreneurs are ultimately servants of
Mhm.
providing some sort of value. I think there's millions of different industries out there than financial advising, but I think the ultimate best people and most success stories out there is because somebody provided value to a lot of people
Mhm.
in a way that yeah, they monetize it well, but they provided more value than it cost, right? And
Right.
that's something that I say always from the get go is that I charge this fee. This is my fee, and it only makes sense to pay for something if you're getting more value than what you're paying for, right? And that value might not just be monetary money back, but it might be your time, it might be your emotions. There's a lot of that kind
Mhm.
of different value built up in what an investment advisor can provide.
That's awesome. Yeah. One other thing that I remember you telling me, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on this as well, is just I think it was maybe your wife you had told me tell that had pointed out the fact that um just people trust you. People just trust you quickly. I remember you telling me this, and you can correct me if I've got that wrong, or if I'm making too much of something here. But um, I do think that that is pretty important in what it like takes to be successful, certainly in your industry, but I think as an entrepreneur in general is building trust. So I would love to hear you speak to a little bit of how you do that. There's a relational side to you that is very very strong, and it's evident even in the way that you maintain relationships. You've been able to utilize your network to start this out. Like how does if you were speaking to someone who's a little bit behind us, in age and still in college or whatever, like what does it look like to be that kind of person?
Yeah, I think so. The story you're referencing, and she does say this all the time because it is kind of funny. I a lot of times people ask, what do you do? And I always tell them what I do. And then I think people are a little bit open in terms of their personal financial information around me, which is it's kind of unique, I guess. Maybe I portray just genuineness. That's what I hope for, certainly. And going back to the last answer, I think if you're genuine about wanting the best for others, I think people can see straight through you.
Yes.
Um, it's kind of pretty obvious in a lot of ways, but yeah, if I can, all the time in conversation, I don't people don't have to be my clients. I throw out free advice on any little topic, like I'll be talking about something s- with somebody that I just meet anywhere, and I just try to plant seeds like anywhere I can. If I just help somebody save some money or think about something differently, that's a win for me. And then I think that if you're just constantly planting seeds around you and doing good for others, you don't have to worry about I'm not worried about monetizing every single person. Like, no, not everybody's going to become my client. But I think a lot of relationships will circle back around. I've had some good stories that have come back to me about, you know, I was in a college classroom in 2019 with a guy, and I was his group partner. And I think if the guy didn't like me at the time, he wouldn't be my client today. But last year we saw each other for the first time since then, and then I told him like what I'm doing right now. He told me what he's doing right now, and then he just asked me to be my client, and I was like, well, that's fantastic.
Wow.
So a lot of good stories like that, they don't always have to work out in favor of me just signing a client and making money, but yeah, I think just being genuine and like you said, trust is the number one thing in my industry. And if someone's uh, letting me in on their livelihood and hopefully being able to contribute to it, that means the world to me. And it, I also think people know that if they have $10,000 to their name or $10 million to their name, that's their situation. And I have the same level of care and respect for that because it means the same thing to each person. It's what you have, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. That's great. Appreciate you giving us some insight there. I think that's just one that just to say again, I think that's one of the things I most admire about you is your ability to do that and the proof's in the pudding. Okay, well let's transition a little bit, kind of get down into some of the details around what you actually do, and maybe we can get some strategies as well. But I know you do work with entrepreneurs. You um, have a growing practice that has a focus on in some part on entrepreneurs. So what exactly would your role be in their lives?
Yeah. So with entrepreneurs, there there's a million different types. There's like you and me, current current solo business owners, not a brick and mortar space, not a bunch of employees. So a bit more time margin, a bit, I'll say low stress, like, you know what I mean? Um, Still stressful,
Speak
but
for yourself.
uh, different kinds of stress, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was bad to say low stress.
I'm just
I
messing with you.
could have came up with anything else, Davis. But anyways, I think that yes, some of my clients I do have a solopreneur. I have people that have brick and mortar buildings and 20, 50 plus employees. So I think that part of my role, not just in terms of like investments or financial advising, is taking some time off of their hands and giving them some time margin back in terms of organization and their finances, not worrying about what the stock market or the government's doing or, the political, whatever the headline is right now, taking them through that. And I say something that I'm really focused on is knowing what my lane is. So in this conversation, I tell clients a lot of times I'm not a tax professional, not a CPA, I'm not an estate planner, but those two things are very important in the financial planning process. So for every entrepreneur, business owner that I work with, I have a relationship with their CPA. So I think that this having context to where their tax return was last year, what kind of ways are they paying themselves is incredibly important to how we invest and manage their cash flow and things like that. So um, I think advisors have a big opportunity to provide value by connecting with their team, which is I say like a 3-person team typically in a more busy entrepreneur is their financial planner, their tax professional, and then their estate planner.
Mm,
And so in my view, the financial advisor should be in all of those meetings just to have the context and to speak to what have I done so far that may affect the tax plan or may affect the estate plan. And um, yeah, I think that is kind of my role and the value that I provide with, you know, other people than entrepreneurs as well, but especially entrepreneurs is just kind of like the leader of their team, that 3-man team.
mm. That's helpful. When you have conversations with potential clients, and I guess we'll stick with entrepreneurs here, but what do you wish they knew about what you do that they oftentimes maybe get hung up on or don't know, or that type of thing?
I think by the social media influence these days and, kind of what you can see on LinkedIn or Instagram about a financial advisor is everybody thinks of one service line.
Mm,
Which, which one do you think that is?
probably investments.
Yeah. So people say my advisor took me from X amount of dollars to X amount of dollars, right? And
Sure.
like that's what financial advisors do. They manage your money. So I think being able to communicate the value beyond that
Mm,
and highlight that that is very important as well. Like
right.
that's a part of it. And that's actually what I'm the most skilled in. That one too. And I'm trying to grow how I communicate with, like I just said, the tax area, the estate area, the financial planning itself is a lot of times bringing the value of how disorganized people are and how they're probably doing something wrong when it comes to taxes and investing mixed, and having, for example, this is kind of into the weeds. What investments go into like what account? Why is this fund better in this account than this fund? And how are we going to? This is the big one. So on my favorite videos and links and articles, in the investment space, they say my advisor, your money grows from zero to X amount of dollars right at a given return. No one talks about how are we going to get those dollars out to actually use one day.
Mm,
And so you may go from zero to a high number, but what if you pay 40% tax
right. Right.
instead of 15% tax, right? That's a less number than, the other.
Mhm.
So I think kind of making people shift their mindset and think about things in a different perspective is huge. I think that it's not everybody's job to be financially educated to the max,
Right.
right? But just being able to explain things in a simple way, but also make them realize like we have to think about some other things than just growing your money from zero to X amount of dollars.
No, that makes complete sense. I like the way you said that. I've seen so much of that communication coming out of things, and it sets up people's expectations sometimes in an unhealthy way as well, as we've talked about as well. So that's helpful. And I think broadens the perspective. Talk about the negative side some more of financial advisors and kind of what they're known for on the more negative side. You've even alluded to it in your story, like how you maybe interact with some who are more just driven by the sales, driven by the numbers, let's make our quota for this month, and maybe less of a fiduciary, and maybe remind us again of what that means to be a fiduciary, but um less less of a servant, if you will, and a lot of people. It seems like a lot of the noise in my ears growing up, even with a fairly strong financial background, was you should never hire a financial advisor because they're out to get you, and they're going to use some sneaky, sleazy sales tactics, and they're going to get you to sign on the dotted line. It's kind of like they were almost like a what do you call them? They were almost like a timeshare person Like that's in the mind of young Andrew. Like that's almost what I was thinking financial advisors were. Is they're literally going to make you sit through a presentation and they're going to steal money from you. They're going to lock
Hey,
you in forever and they're going to steal money from you. So I imagine that that's the scenario in many people's minds. How would you talk on that? Defend yourself. No, I'm just
no,
kidding.
no. I obviously have this conversation a lot, and I
Of
try to
course.
have this in the first meeting where I'm a very casual person, so I say, hey, um, prospective client, would you like to get lunch or have a FaceTime with me just so I can tell you about myself and what I do? So that's a big part of that meeting. So what I do is I agree with that fear 100%, and
Right.
I say that I'm out to make the industry right
Mhm.
for all of those wrongs, and I fear financial advisors. I'm very upset with a lot of them, and um, I think there's so much bad out there, and so
Yeah.
I tell my clients I'm on your team,
Mhm.
right? I'm you have every right to be very fearful and not like to fear monger them, but you have every right to be very cautious and um, yeah, I get a little angry at how some of the stories that maybe my clients had a previous advisor doing X, Y, and Z. I'm telling them this is why this was wrong for these many years, and this is what could have been done and where you could have been, and then they have a good aha moment. So what I explain in simple terms is there's kind of two sides to the industry, and I think the Money Guy show is they're two very popular advisors. They explain this very well. There's kind of the broker dealer sales side,
Mhm.
and this just breaks down how advisors get paid, right? So the sales side is what is called broker dealers, and they're usually licensed in to sell insurance. So usually life insurance and disability insurance and maybe long term care insurance. So the only way that they get paid is by selling you, Andrew, a product. Andrew, in your financial plan, we need life insurance. And then they might be motivated to tell you you need a little bit more life insurance as a single dude with no family and that doesn't need life insurance. And
Yeah.
and then on the investment side, there is many ways that they can get paid without you seeing the fees through commissions of a mutual fund, um, they usually are backed by a company that you know says, "Hey, like if somebody pays $10 in a commission, we'll give you seven or something like that."
Mhm.
And so that's that side, and that's one that I disagree with out there. And then there's the fee only side, which is the side that I'm on. And those advisors can get paid through several different ways of just a clear fee. And it's usually under the assets under management model, right? And that is one that um, is still kind of controversial to some people because you say those are the compounding calculator articles, right? And they usually just use the S&P 500, not a real diversified portfolio, right? But um, yeah, it's very black and white, and I try to be as clear as I can. This is the only way that these type of advisors get paid. This is the assets that we manage. This is the fee on that that comes out quarterly. That is the only way I get paid, and I am a firm believer in that. It's the best way because it's directly aligned with the
Yeah.
client's best interest of going up in value over time.
Mhm.
There's a few out there that are project based, you could call it, like flat fee based. Like, hey, I'll give you a financial plan for $5,000,
Right.
right? And I think that can be good in some places. I think a lot better than broker dealer sales charges and life insurance commissions. But I've found through some studies and experiences that those advisors, not saying this is all of them, obviously, but you might want to rush through the project to kind of get to your next one to collect that fee. So I think the advisors under the fee only AUM model are seeking more so the long term relationship of growing clients' wealth from very low, where you might not make much money at all on a lot of clients if you don't have a minimum, which I do
Right.
not. And then I want to see, my clients' kids go from kids to we fund their 529 plans for college and um, see that plan be successful, and then take someone 20 years out from retirement to a retirement that they want to live.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's kind of the bad of the industry, and kind of how the pay structures work. And it to me, it should just be black and white. And when you have a financial advisor and someone asks you, "Hey, what do you pay? Like, what does it cost?" You should be
Right.
able to say, "Boom, this is it."
Yeah.
And that is it. That is only it.
Mhm.
And most people don't know exactly the amount, right? So I think, and then you should be able to, it should be able to sit with you well and say, yeah, that guy, he helps me with so many different areas. And, that I would pay that. Yeah, I love paying it. Not that
Right.
you love paying fees, but, like for example, I get my taxes done by somebody that I pay, and I'm very glad to pay it because she's very great, very good at her job. Right.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's really it, man. Um I try to be as casual but simple and to the point as I can about it. So
Yeah. That's super helpful. And I guess I'm curious, since we're having this conversation now, it's like there's so many people out there who run on the other system, kind of the broker dealer, sales side of things.
mhm.
Do you have any idea, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe just play the devil's advocate for a minute. Like, why does that exist? Like, and is there an argument for, are there a few pros to having that approach, like, or can you not find any? If you can't, like, that's fine. We'll take that as where you stand, and that's good. But
Mm.
more out of curiosity than anything, as I evaluate where the market is, like, what would be on their
Yeah.
list of pros,
Yeah, so I can tell you why that
Mhm.
this model exists is because, like I alluded to earlier in my investment history, the cost of investing and buying securities used to be completely different. Say back in the 80s, 90s, you used to have to call into a desk to make a trade, and that trade was like $10. Like you'd pay a very hefty stock commission for buying a security. So that's kind of where the whole financial industry came from, and then it developed into pooled investments of multiple stocks, which are mutual funds. And so throughout the 90s to 2000s, that's just it was the only option. So I don't think that it's just been cleared out already, because there's a lot of advisors that are still have a great book of business that are they started that way. They don't want to just like change everything that they've done and all the systems and things like that. So
I see.
because the ETF world really is still pretty new. So the Vanguard has been one of the kind of premier people of the lowest cost ETFs, followed by like your Schwab and Dimensional and Vesco, and it's gotten really popular now. And which like I said earlier, it's just phenomenal for the client to pay 0.03 to 0.1% expense ratios on funds that are compared to like a 1% sales load or like a $25 sales charge or something like that, or um, in kind of the old way. Why they
Mhm.
operate now still beats me when you have a cheaper option. I think that I will say a pro of the financial planning process and is if somebody is truly being a fiduciary and they can sell insurance, it's good to have it all like in house,
Sure.
right? Like
Mm.
if one of my clients truly needed a low cost term life insurance policy, do I wish that I could just write it up for them and make a commission from that? Sure.
Yeah.
Like if it's like directly for them, it's a great product. I mean, I only recommend term insurance. Me and my wife have term life insurance, right? So in that part of the financial planning process of reviewing insurance, I mean, it's kind of a pro to have it in-house, same person for all your kind of financial things. That's like the only thing that I can think of. And
Yeah.
but most people are inclined to sell more if they're going to earn a bigger commission, right?
Right.
So at the same time, I am glad that I can go refer somebody who is an insurance salesman. That's what they state that they are. And I can go say, hey, Mr. Insurance person, my client needs $500,000 of term coverage. So there's no negotiation between them of them trying to earn a bigger thing because I'm objectively telling them this is the need of the household, right? So
Mm,
y- saying that, I can't even come up with a pro
yeah, yeah.
of it. So
No, that makes sense. I mean, okay, so just for the sake of the audience and for those who may not understand all these terms, just point
yeah.
blank. Fiduciary. What do you mean by fiduciary?
So the legal definition of fiduciary is the person who is the fiduciary, me in
Mhm.
my case, is only legally allowed to act in my client's best interest,
Okay.
which you think that should kind of be the where the
Base.
bar is set for handling people's money and livelihoods. But a lot of those different licenses don't legally require them to be a fiduciary
Okay.
when you're selling a product. Um,
Well, and
so
I think the problem can be where you just said, if I'm hearing you right, is like if someone puts themselves out as a financial advisor and is actually more of an insurance salesman, that's where a disconnect can easily occur in the mind of the consumer. Where it's like, oh, great, this person is, I'm going to assume they're a fiduciary, on working in my best interests on my side of the table because they're a financial advisor, but actually they're more of an insurance salesman, and it's just I can see why someone would want to go directly to someone who actually says they're an insurance salesman as opposed to someone who is putting themselves out a little bit differently. Um, what you also mentioned ETFs. ETFs, uh, exchange traded funds, right?
yes.
That's kind of the um, reason for the change in the market is what I heard you to say. The market is changing because it's so cheap with exchange traded funds. Is that true? Did I hear you right on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's very true.
Do you think that that will continue to shift the market toward fee-only financial planners?
Absolutely. I think that the and you might ask me a question eventually about AI and technology, but I think that with technology and advancements and things like that, the type of business like mine, I think, is very much continuing to pop up and grow the RIA business around
Mhm.
the country because of the ability to manage portfolios well with good technology and the ease of trading nowadays, which has
Mhm.
been a huge plus for people like me to be able to serve clients in a high quality level and not have to be bogged down in the trading aspect.
Mhm.
Um, so absolutely, I hope so. I hope it
Yeah.
keeps evolving to be the best for the client, right? Which is the lowest cost for the best investment you can get.
Right.
You know, so I hope
That
so.
makes sense. I'm trying to catch these acronyms and these jargon as we use them to try and keep track of it for people who may not understand. But RIA would be Registered Investment Advisor. Is that
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yep.
and so that's a specific type of structure to a particular firm, like it's a firm
Mhm.
entity type, right, for a financial advisor.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Um, okay. So let's talk about that example that you also kind of mentioned in passing that I'd love to hear you talk about. You've already kind of covered that ground with me in prior conversations, but the going back to some advice I received when I was a kid, and even as an adolescent, is you know you are so young, you have so many years ahead of you, you can afford to take a lot of risk, and why not just put your money in the S&P 500 long term. um, there should be no reason for you to get a financial advisor, um, especially one that charges a percentage fee. Um, like, let's just take the bad actors out of it. Like, I get critique for having a financial or like having asking the question about financial advising for myself just because there's that 1% fee or whatever it is. So I'm not answering that. I'm not asking the question super clearly, but I think it is that person who says, I am too young to need this level of advice. I'll need it only when I hit retirement. What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah. This is one of the main questions, right, in the
Yes.
industry, which I love answering the question. Um, so S&P 500, why not buy the S&P? It's like "voo and chill" is the kind of term on Twitter maybe. But I think what is important, and you know how I kind of said that I affirm my clients and when they think that financial advisors are bad.
Mhm.
I also say that buying the S&P 500 and doing nothing is a great strategy.
Right.
It's like people try to say, come up with this whole counter argument like why it's not and all that. It is. It's a great investment in itself, and I think if somebody 18 years old to 65 years old bought the S&P 500 up and down dollar cost average, they would end up with, remember we talked about going from 0 to X dollars with a lot of money at a very low cost. You can get the S&P fund for 0.03% expense ratio, right?
Mhm.
So I think all of that is, I'm saying that two things can be true at the same time.
Sure.
So I affirm that that is a great investment. It can be in many great 401k portfolios. A lot of advisors use the S&P 500, and so that's just kind of what I want to say first.
Yeah.
Um, you're saying you're right, and that makes clients feel good, like you're that's true. So, and then I say, if we're comparing apples to apples, I take my clients' funds and then I put them in the S&P 500 only, and then I charge 1%. I'm not providing any value, right? And I'm just doing the investment management. No one needs an advisor that just does that, and then
Right.
sends them the investment report at the end of the year of what the S&P did that year, right? That
Right.
that would be what we're talking apples to apples, no value provided.
Sure.
So to kind of get into the weeds of what that is, what is the S&P 500? It's the 500 biggest companies in the world, right? And I'm not going to know the exact percentage without looking at my nice stock website, but the way the S&P works is it's market cap weighted. So at this point, with how big companies have gotten, like your Nvidia, the Mag 7, Tesla, Google, Microsoft, the top 10 holdings of the S&P 500 make up more than 40% of the fund. So
Okay.
say you have $100,000 put into the S&P 500, $40,000 is in like 10 stocks.
Sure.
And all of those stocks mostly are in technology. So people think that you're buying 500 companies. I'm very diversified. The actual outcome of the fund's returns are not very diversified at all. It is a large cap growth, mostly ETF. So that's
Wow.
like one sector and one kind of asset class, you could say. So when you talk about diversification, you're very, I would say, under diversified in that one investment, right? And I think that over a course of 40 years, maybe that's fine.
Mhm.
But a good reference that I show my clients is there's multiple decade periods of time where the S&P 500 from one period to the 10 years goes down
Mm.
in value. So you would rather just put your money in your checking account for
Right.
10 years,
Right.
right? That's not a good outcome. And that's cherry picking data, right? Like it's over time, you usually are able to buy the dips, right? You're able to purchase more shares during the 2008s, the 2022s, the low years, and then have a better return when it recovers.
Mhm.
But kind of going back to what I said about going from $0 to X amount of dollars, how do we get not just your money from to that point, but how do we get it out as a
Mhm.
distribution one day to be able to use it as income, right? You've probably heard, and I guess for the audience, the 4% rule is how you can maybe take withdrawal from your portfolio. You could take 4% of it every year, and then it should never you should never run out of money. Kind of
Mhm.
is the old way of that, and people kind of apply that to the S&P 500, but that study was done in a diversified portfolio of 60% stocks and 40% bonds.
Okay.
So not even, it tells you we're not comparing apples to apples here.
Right.
So the risk that I kind of referenced of those, long periods of the S&P 500 being negative is what's called sequence of return risk. So example, I'm cherry picking here, 2000 comes and you want to retire, right? You just had a huge bull market. Your portfolio's up from the tech boom of the late 90s, and you decided to retire in 2000, 2001. You had, I think, 2000, 2001, 2002, negative, negative, negative. And
Mhm.
you're trying to withdraw from your retirement portfolio of, say, the S&P 500 and the large, growth companies, you're going to run out of money
Right. Right.
and when you retire. And that's one of the more extreme cases, right? And there's a lot of things that go into building a distribution plan and protecting yourself to get your money out. But I think that, like I said, two things can be true at the same time. When you get to building a portfolio for the long term, there's so many more asset classes like small caps, and you could break those in, or I break those into small cap growth, small cap value, and then you have this year is a great example of the time we're in right now. Large value is up 12% this year to date,
Hmm.
and the tech market, the Nasdaq is down 16%. So if you had
Wow.
some diversification, your portfolio, a lot of my clients' portfolios are up this year
Mhm.
while everyone's freaking out that their, most popular names are, getting hit pretty hard right now.
Yep.
Um, so that's just kind of the story of what true diversification is, and, how to build a portfolio to not just seek, X amount of dollars at the end game, but how am I going to pay myself the most and the highest withdrawal rate possible one day when I want to use my portfolio for income?
Mhm. Yeah. I I've never heard it described quite like that, with the S&P being like almost less diversified than people would think. I think that's a huge kind of nugget that some people are going to hear and go, "Oh, I didn't realize that at all." Like that changes the whole game a little
Mhm.
bit. Um, and I hear you on the retirement side of things and how to build a distribution plan, but I guess I want to push back on that a little bit, because I think the common knowledge, the common logic would be like, oh, until you reach a certain age, like you shouldn't have a financial advisor. After that, you should. Like everyone's aware that like for the
Mhm.
retirement age, like you better get some bonds in there. You better do all that. Blah blah blah. I think the question more is along the lines of like under the age of 35 or 40, or I don't even know what the age would be, but like under the age where you don't have a rapidly declining number of years to kind of close the gap with retirement, like you should be fine on your own. Do you have any other thoughts related to that? Like I'm just gonna play. I'm pushing up against, because I know some people are gonna think like, oh, well,
Yeah.
you're obviously talking about that retirement age, which people would say, yeah, of course you need a financial advisor then. But
Mhm.
what about before that? Diversification. I hear that. What else? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yes. So again, stating that two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
So you can go S&P 500 all the way till retirement and try to do that, right?
Hmm.
So when you say you invested from $0 throughout your 20s, 30s, 40s into the S&P, and you got to $1 million,
Right.
when you were 60, and a lot of that with compounding is going to be gains, right? And then you say, okay, now that I'm retired, I actually need to play this diversification game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what do I need to do? I need to rebalance my portfolio. I need to sell a lot of this, and probably in a taxable account, you're going to realize tons of taxes by doing that. And then you're going to cut your portfolio probably by, 150, 250,000, depending on your state. So then you have $800,000 in a taxable account.
Right.
So the management side in a taxable account, that's very inefficient. That's where the value of building your portfolio from the start in the multiple asset classes as it rises
Yeah.
lets you get that money out in retirement. And then I'll push back on myself for that. What about retirement accounts? Because you can just ride it all the way to large gains and then redistribute tax free and tax deferred accounts, right? Um, I can explain that further if you want me to, but I think that when you're, let's say you're nearing those 10 to 15 years of like when you want to go be able to retire, right? And you're rocking the S&P 500. I think that sequence of return risk still applies when you want to then further diversify and start using a financial advisor. Because say, what if you wanted to retire in 2005 and then you get hit with a 2000? you're
Mm,
still like delaying and delaying your retirement because your portfolio's just been going down the whole time.
yeah.
So the same rules still apply, not as much magnitude, but I'm a firm believer in building the portfolio from the ground, starting higher. And we can also get into the historic returns of the stock market, right? So I think a lot of the articles in the S&P 500 is very popular nowadays because the last 15 years of recency bias has
Mhm.
created that.
Wow.
So the lost decade of the 2000s, nobody was asking about the S&P 500. They were
Yeah.
asking for small cap value, international stocks. That's a whole nother conversation we haven't even talked about, like international versus US. Like last year, for example, international did 40%
Right.
and destroyed the S&P 500. And that would feel really good in retirement when your portfolio is doing very well. And like emerging markets is up 7%, I think, year to date right now, and the S&P is down 6. So, um, all that to say, for the life of the stock market, we have now over 100 years of data. Small cap companies have outperformed large cap companies for the life of the stock market. So if you want to talk about this returns of set and forget, you should just buy a small cap index.
Interesting. Interesting.
And all of the data that people show as what has happened in the past. Like nobody knows what the next 40 years is going
Right.
to do. Large caps could average, I mean, nobody knows, but a lot of the big fund managers are saying that they predict large cap companies to return 3 to 4%
Mm,
annually for the next 10 years.
mm.
And this year we're starting off, on that track. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just nobody knows the future, and the next 40 years could be a huge winner for the international markets, and the U.S. may underperform. Who knows? So
Hmm.
I think it's just being a prudent investor and kind of showing your clients that level of detail, and you kind of get some aha moments of what
Right.
is actually diversification and protecting yourself, and then this is kind of going even deeper a bit into the weeds, but I will try not to be too specific. But through different economic phases, the power of rebalancing your portfolio is a huge way to drive returns.
Okay.
Example: right now, with the large value category being up 12% year to date, I'm able to take a lot of my clients' funds, capture some of those gains in its weighting, and then redistribute at much lower prices to the large growth right now that is down heavily.
Hmm.
And so I'm not being a trader and saying I'm selling all my, defense stocks and, like your Lockheed Martins and the oil that's up right now and just going all in on tech. I'm not doing that. But how you weight the portfolio is a big way to actually drive returns higher than just sitting there. Which is a huge thing in terms of like the portfolio management world. That's kind of where I sit and I specialize in. So I just went in a little deep on the details there.
No, I mean, I think it's helpful. Yeah, and that's something that people don't would not think about doing. And it's essentially, if I'm understanding that concept correctly, it would be essentially like taking some extra money on that has accrued as part of like man, you made some money over here. Let's take it and buy some stocks on sale. Is that a
Mhm.
fair way to say it? Let's take
Yeah.
some of that gains and let's not take them all because we want to keep that growth trajectory going over here. But on this side, we've got some that are like really cheap, and we'd be ahead if we capitalize on
Mhm.
that and then we let those grow, into the future because likely they'll rebound, kind of thing. Was that a fair assessment on what you
Yep.
said?
You nailed it.
Okay. Yeah. No, that is all super helpful and the other thing that comes to mind with this whole conversation as you're saying it is beginning with the end in mind and like this idea of starting out right so that eventually when you get to the time when you do need the money that it's set up in such a way that's tax advantaged and that's going to be risk adjusted, that's going to be diversified in the right way. You're going to be able to move it to correct places, and it can just be a heavy lift for someone who's really, unless they've got a specific bent toward financial knowledge and investments individually. It can just be a significant lift for someone at an early stage in their life when they're trying to manage all kinds of other stuff with their career and all these types of things. Like, I don't know. I think to know all the details of that, to be able to begin well, so that you're not picking up the pieces later. That's also something that was coming to mind in kind of overarching of what you were saying. Correct me if that's wrong, but
Yeah.
um,
I think uh, this has popped into my head about the original question of kind of what drives value for, the 1% fee, right? And I think that a lot of it's kind of a cliche said thing in the space is really keeping clients on track and not having kind of having the blinders on to the world we live in today, which is a lot of gambling or this cool stock over here or that potential real estate opportunity. You know, off recording, I was telling you like I just saved a guy a significant headwind and potential bad outcome from a real
right,
estate opportunity.
right,
And how do I put that into value? I don't know what the downside of that could have been. But
right,
he's like, "Oh my goodness, you're right." Like I said, right now, in terms of like where we are in the market right now, the Nasdaq, if we get a return to just where it was, another return to an all time high, that's a 20% return on the table right now.
uh-huh,
And I'm like, and that's going to be tax deferred and not have to pay your high tax bracket on some potential what sounds cool real estate flips or a stock flip or something like that. So what clients don't do and what you keep them from not doing is something that you can't usually put a dollar amount on,
right,
but
right,
when emotion runs high and unfortunately gambling kind of your money and this day in social media is very popular. So just keeping people bored and saying it's supposed to be lame, it's supposed to be like not fun, but like this is your livelihood to keep the blinders on is
um,
a huge value that I don't like to hammer in too on because it doesn't sound cool. I can't say I'm saving you 10 grand a year on whatever by not doing this. And, people will say, oh, I'm not emotional. I'm not going to gamble. I'm like, you probably will do something like or want to do something over the course of your career that might not be the best, opportunity. So,
mhm. That's
yeah.
good. That's good. That's great. Yeah, great link back to that story from even just recently. Okay. This has been super, super helpful. I think people will be really enlightened by a lot of these thoughts on where is the value of a good financial advisor, Let's talk about some of we just mentioned how you save some people some headache and you keep them from doing the bad things. What about the good things? Like we've talked about, and I guess we've already spoken quite a bit about some of your actual investment strategies, diversification, these types of things. But what else comes to mind in terms of like strategies, and particularly around the entrepreneur space, that you would be able to lead clients through that you would find to be immensely valuable for these types of clients that they may not think of. Maybe they do think of it, but I don't know. It's maybe lesser known.
Mm. Yeah, I think a big one is the charitable giving space.
Okay.
I think kind of in my world, I'm used to talking about this a lot, but uh, a big opportunity that with clients that are already charitable, like saying, "Hey, I'm already going to give." Let's just put numbers on it, round numbers, $10,000 a year, right? I love to donate $10,000 a year to my church, this charity that I'm passionate about. I said that's great. So usually people take their dollars, they hand it to said church, and they get a tax deduction, for $10,000. Like most people know that step, right?
Mhm.
I think there's an opportunity of using two things. So a donor advised fund for a taxable account is a account that you can give. Say you buy, let's use our $10,000 example. Say a client has some old Apple stock. They buy Apple stock for $5,000. It rises to $10,000. You have a $5,000 capital gain there. Um, Usually you would say, instead of taking our 10,000 bucks, giving it to the charity, I said, let's take our $10,000, put it into our brokerage account, and let's give $10,000 directly of Apple stock
Yeah.
and bypass that $5,000 of capital gains. And you can transfer from your stock account, your brokerage account, directly to your donor advised fund, um, and just an electronic transfer. So, example, that's $5,000 saved in capital gains tax, right? And I think of my clients in California that are paying 20% federal and 13% state. So 20% of 5,000 is $1,000, and then 13% is, whatever. You get what I mean? You're
Right.
talking 33% tax on 5 grand. And so that's a huge one in terms of a tactical, charitable giving. And then you get that same $10,000 tax deduction of the actual gift amount itself.
Yeah.
And then your $10,000 re-enters your taxable account at a higher basis. Say you wanted to keep the Apple stock, let's just buy it at a higher cost basis. And then if you want to sell it one day or give some more, then you can kind of rinse and repeat there. And that really helps the taxable account become more in the nature of like a Roth IRA, just eliminating the highest percentage of gains as you can. To think about, what we talked the whole time, getting the money out of the account rather than, the overall balance. Where does it land? That's kind of the charitable thing. And also, I won't go into as much depth on this one, but you can donate money out of a IRA in terms of qualified charitable distributions instead of taking like a RMD that's going to raise your tax rate up and having you pay income tax, and then that just saves you whatever your ordinary income rate is on those IRA distributions. So charitable giving is a big one. And then something that I've really grown to realize is where people store cash. And that's been, everybody usually has like your traditional 3 to 6 month emergency fund, or maybe businesses keep cash that are just in business accounts.
Right.
I've seen that. High yield savings accounts are great, but they tend to be a little bit lower than a bit lower than the regular risk-free treasury that is out there. So say a treasury pays 4% and then you make 3.2% in a high yield savings account currently. And I say this, I say net of my fee, this still makes sense for you, right? Because you're still paying the fee to me, right?
Uh-huh.
And generally, clients are my fees go lower than 1%. So it's not a comparison of 1% clients' effective rates. I try to be lower than 1%. So I again use the California state tax, or if you're in a state tax city, this math really works out more. You don't pay any interest income on treasuries, right? At the state tax level. So if you take 13% off of the yields you're getting in a state like California, you can yield more risk-free income on your cash that's just sitting there. And in times like we've been in the last few years, you could get 5% on a treasury. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Still can get 4% right now. So just little things like that. And I mean, a lot of people just have money sitting in checking accounts, right? So
Right.
how do we combat inflation is really one of the biggest goals in terms of financial planning.
Mm,
That is kind of one of the biggest risks out there. That's just a few.
okay.
There's a lot of more detailed ones, but kind of just off the bat, those are two of some of the easy fixes that I've been able to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I've heard you mention, I'm trying to think the one that you mentioned to me specifically that was, um, yeah, particularly for entrepreneurs, I think maybe like was it a Simple or a SEP?
Oh
Is
yeah.
is that one of them that's particularly geared toward entrepreneurs as well?
Yeah, so when you typically work in like a corporation, you have a good 401k plan
Mhm.
that is available for you, and the employer will match 3-5% of your pay, right? Which is a great retirement account. That's how most of America builds their wealth, right? They have their home that usually goes up in value over a long period of time. They retire on Social Security, which is its own conversation nowadays. And then, people have money in their 401k.
Right.
That's really that's really how America is retiring these days. So when you run your own thing and doing whatever you're doing, like how am I gonna? You don't have a 401k plan, so there's kind of two options. A SEP IRA is usually for employees with, or usually for entrepreneurs with no employees or no full time W 2 employees. And that's just a way to defer taxes, like in a 401k manner
Mm,
that will grow and be a retirement account that you can withdraw. And then a solo 401k works as well. It's a bit more complex to set up, but you kind of have the employee and employer side of the contributions that can be a similar advantage as well.
right.
Typically paired with also just your regular Roth IRA that
Right.
most people should be utilizing. And that kind of brings in a conversation of just regular W 2 employees or entrepreneurs. Most people kind of know what the backdoor Roth IRA is once you get above the income levels of a regular Roth IRA. And going back to strategies for entrepreneurs, I think most people that are DIYers out there do not complete the backdoor Roth steps correctly and end up just paying a tax and converting, $7,500 a year at, whatever their tax rate is. That's actually what happens. But you can get that money in to Roth IRAs even if you're over the income limit. So there's just some tax rules and things like that that most people are not aware of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's great. That's great. Well, it gives people a teaser to think about what it would be like to work with someone like you. And yeah, it, that's awesome. That I think helps people. I mean, some of those strategies, even the ones you last mentioned that are more particular or specific. Those would be the areas where you're really seeing that value of that fee that you're paying. I
Mhm.
think we're building a case here. You know, and I've tried to play the devil's advocate some, but I mean, I do believe in what you're doing as well. So I'm biased for the audience. They got to know that I'm a little biased here too. But I think we are building a case for like why at an earlier age, like this would be a good thing, especially if you expect to make quite a bit of money in your career and you have aspirations of going the distance there and don't want to be involved in all these details and do a bunch of ChatGPT research that may or may not be right. It may or may not end up being right for you. So that's good. You're welcome to jump in with any other things that we may have missed there, but I did want to ask you about moving on to another question too, the just the financial industry as a whole as we wrap up, thinking about challenges and opportunities. Um, what are you seeing? What are you seeing as if we're speaking to young entrepreneurial people, maybe some who are looking at the financial services market? Yeah, what do they need to know about both sides of that coin, the challenges and the opportunities?
Um, I think that the ultimate challenge here is relationships.
Mm,
How do you find people without let's say somebody wants to be an advisor. How do you want to find people to talk to without sounding like you're selling
sure.
something? Ultimately, on the fee only side, we've gone over this. So you're selling yourself and your expertise, right? And I think that people, do have a wall up, which we've said rightfully so. Financial, you should have a wall up and know what questions to ask some advisor that's approaching you. And for me, that's the hardest thing is just getting in front of good people to connect with, and then I feel very confident. Once I have I'm able to have some conversations. My conversion rate to doing business with good people is pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think that it's you know everything that we've talked about is connected. I genuinely care and want to help people, and people can see that. People can see right through people that do not want to. But that's really the kind of the hardest challenge still. But also, the AI stuff is. I don't think it's a challenge, but it's made things easier and harder on me in my career. And there is infinite research out there for the DIYers to be able to do it, but it also helps a lot of people as well. It helps me. I can use it to be a lot more efficient to scale my business and provide quality to probably a little bit more people than if I was doing the same thing in 1998,
Hmm.
especially. But yeah, I think those are the main things. I mean, everyone's going to have their opinions. Some things are black and white. You know, like this is wrong tax wise. Like this is against tax law, or there's some things like that. But also, I've done things for clients that don't make sense by the numbers.
Mm,
Like this is. I'm like, this is for sure going to make you have less money, but it's also not about that. It's like, what if I want to work less and, be able to retire 3 years earlier, and, um, or what if I want to have an estate that's left more tax free, maybe a lower dollar amount, but it's left tax free to my kids one day.
mm,
That's a conversation where some dollars are not maximizing the dollar amount. So I think that AI a lot of times will spit you out the right numbers, but it can't listen to somebody's feelings about their top priorities. So that kind of
mm.
gives me confidence in AI not replacing me, hopefully, but people still care about relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. So far, it does seem like AI is more of a helper as opposed to the main driver, and we'll see if that changes. But I was pleased when I heard someone else who was a guest on my podcast a couple weeks ago. He was talking about building. He's got a very unique business model. I actually brought him up several times because it's so unique. It's one of the things that is just a good example though. He builds recipes and sells them, or is trying to sell them using AI, and truly trying to lean into the cross-cultural recipes and building like cookbooks for different. He's Mexican from Mexico City, and so he's building different cookbooks for different countries, and that's his vision. And um, yeah, he was just like, it's important, Andrew, to know the difference, like in the way that you say this, like essentially, you know. People would say, "Oh, it's AI recipes, like how good can it be?" And he's like, "No, that's actually not what it is. It's Hugo's recipes that I'm creating and I'm using AI to help me kind of thing. And I think that's a helpful distinction. I mean, I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll see where we end up fast forward 5 years from now. But I think so far it's more of, I see people using it more as a project manager or as a co-employee as opposed to, like fully like relying on it or taking, and replacing themselves with it. So, um, okay. Going to the granular on the yeah, let's say we've got a college student in front of us who's talking about being a financial advisor, and they want to get in the space. You already mentioned relationships, the importance of that. We talked about how you do that on some level. What else would you say in terms of actions to take from your own journey?
Mhm.
What would you say they should do?
Yeah, I think that if their end goal is to have their own RIA firm
Hmm.
in this space, which I think that there's a lot of pros to it, which we've been over. And if somebody wants to be that, their own boss and run their own firm type thing, I think that just getting and working for someone and learning for however long you want to learn it and however long it takes you is just really important. Like get your foot in the door at a firm that you want to work for. If you want to work there for a long time, like where you work is really going to make your experience. And because I mean, a lot of people are great advisors, but they might be overworked
Mm,
and they might have 150 households that they have to manage, and they're just kind of bogged down and they get burned out of it.
right.
Um, so somewhere that's gonna hopefully compensate you fairly, but also just be a great place to learn and um, be something that's sustainable for you. And then there's a lot more to the business side, like the systems, the technology, the filings, the regulatory environment of this space. To learn that beforehand is very important. So
Mm,
might not be the cool answer to say you probably shouldn't do that just like on your own, like no experience. But that's a big one for me. And have I would say try to have a good mentor
mhm,
that you kind of can listen to how they navigate meetings and things like that. So luckily, I've had those things, and that's like I said, it's not me that led me to this moment. It's
yeah,
like just being around and seeing things to make me think that okay, I kind of got it. I think I can pursue it on my own.
That's fantastic. Yeah. No, good advice there. Okay. Well, what are you most excited about as we look to the next year? You've got a year ahead of you. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, at the beginning of this year, I mean, I'm still in the growth phase and discovering things and learning. I I may have taught like I have it kind of figured out. I absolutely don't. But I've hopefully leaning into things that I've found successful so far and continuing to learn lessons of what I don't want to redo
Hmm.
this year as this a learning year. And when I kind of started this thing, I said, okay, I really just want to have my head down for the first 3 to 5 years and try to get to 2030 and hopefully look up and have a good amount of quality relationships. And I've had I'm proud of where I've started, but I hope to continue and replicate what I've done so far. But just continuing and being excited to continue the process of building
Hmm.
and this kind of keep the head down and building quality over quantity. And it's tough to have that mindset when you're building a book, right? You kind of want to push numbers and things like that. But I'm just trying to keep to myself on what I said when I was started. Just focus on helping people, and then the relationships will come. And my best referral is me doing a great job at with the
Yep.
people that I currently have, right? So mostly so focusing on that, and then yeah, just adapting and enjoying the process, and not waiting till X amount of business goals and things like that, but just enjoying exactly where I am right now. So
It's great. It's great. Well, I am excited for you, and as both of us had kind of started our business at the same time. I run it like crazy enough from the same out of the same company where we worked at previously. It's just been cool to see your journey, and it's inspiring to be alongside you in this. I'm excited to see where it all goes. And yeah, really grateful for the time today. We covered a lot. I don't. You're
yeah.
welcome to share any last words if you've got stuff on your mind, but really just thankful for the expertise you shared and the stories. So
Yeah, I'm not a social media guy. I'm not a podcaster, so I appreciate you having me on, even though this isn't my lane. But hopefully, I can. Uh, if somebody learns something, that's kind of my I'd be fulfilled from that. So I
that's good.
appreciate you having me on too, man.
Well, you're gonna be big time one time. You're gonna be big time one day. So it's one of those things where maybe it's the beginning of something. You'll be a podcast guest, a professional before it's all said and done. People are gonna be reaching out all over the place.
That'd be cool. We'll see, man.
I see it. I see it. Hey, well, great chatting, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and excited to see where all this goes. So with that, we'll sign off for now.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.